Hey everybody, it's Amanda, and it's week 5 of our Bible study for Esther called Becoming a Woman of Influence. Hey, I'm really excited this week to do this chapter 5. I think it might be one of my favorite chapters, and I'm going to be honest with you, I know that this chapter, the things that I'm going to say are going to make some folks upset, and I'm going to say that at the outset because I know the things that I'm saying would have made me upset years ago. But you know, we're all grown-ups here and we can take tough things, and I'm just going to say what I got to say and take it or leave it, however you want to do it. But I'm just going to tell you, we're going to talk about the Bible, what it says, and some practical ways to do it. But before that, let's recap from last week. Last week we talked about prayer. Remember, Esther was faced with this time, for such a time as this, that she had to go before the king, and it was dangerous, and she and Mordecai and all of her people were committed to praying and fasting in preparation for Esther to go into the king. And so the task that I gave everyone last week was to pray for something particularly, something very important in your life, for at least a solid week. And so I don't want to give you any details about what I was praying about, but I will say this, that there has been some things that I've been praying out about diligently to the Lord. And the week did not go easy in terms of that particular thing. But constantly, consistently, I am definitely seeing the Lord work and making changes. These are, what I've been praying about is something that I really can't do much about. You know, it's something that just the Lord has to handle. And I'm seeing his hand in it daily, just day to day to day. And so I hope, and this is what I'm saying, I keep sharing with you my experiences. This one I can't give very much experience because a lot of it's personal, but let me just say this. I hope that you guys will go down in the comments section and share your experience, if you'd like, about the Lord answering your prayer, because I really hope that you all have been praying faithfully, that there's something, I know everyone has things on their heart, and I hope that you've been praying faithfully, trusting the Lord to make a change in your life, knowing that he can and he will. So I hope that you guys are seeing God's hand in your life because of prayer, the way that I have been. And if you are faithful, I'm sure that you will. So please share your comments down below and experiences if you're open to that. We'd love to hear it, love to hear how the Lord's working in your life. But that being said, just know that I have been praying. There are burdens. If you want to pray for me, great. There are burdens that I have, and the Lord's been doing a great work in my life. So I just want to praise him for that. So that being said, we're in Esther chapter 5 today. And I'm going to go ahead and read the whole chapter, y'all. I'm telling you, I don't know if I'm prepared to talk about this, but I hope you're prepared to hear it. So Esther chapter 5, I'm going to read the whole thing and then we'll talk about it. Verse 1. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther? And what is thy request? It shall be even given thee to the half of the kingdom. And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Then the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther hath said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Esther and said, My petition and my request is, if I found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said. Then went Haman forth that day joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh his wife. And Haman told him of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children and all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him among the princes and servants of the king. Haman said moreover, Yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared but myself. And tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. Yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Then said Zeresh his wife, and all his friends unto him, Let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high. And tomorrow speak thou unto the king, that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. You guys, that's Esther chapter 5. And I always have like a theme for the chapter, and this one is called Becoming a Woman of Influence, which is actually where I got the title of this entire Bible study from, because I think that we can see Esther's great influence in everything that she does, but this chapter in particular is just the strength of her influence and how she uses it for a purpose, for God's purpose in her life. So anyway, just an overview really fast. So remember, they were fasting and praying. Esther was going to go into the king, and if she went before him and he did not extend that scepter to her, she was going to be dead. But he did. He saw her, he extended the scepter to her, she touched it, and he said, whatever you want, up to half the kingdom, I'm going to do it. And she said, I prepared a banquet. I want you and Haman to come. And he's like, tell Haman to hurry up. Get on in here. We're going to go to this banquet. So they have this banquet. And the king is just so excited. He's like, whatever you want, I'll give it to you, up to half the kingdom. She's like, how about you come to a banquet again tomorrow with Haman? And he's like, done. And so that's Esther. It doesn't sound like much, but let me tell you something. We're going to talk about that in a second. But then you have this other picture that Haman, as he leaves, he's thrilled. He just had this whole banquet privately with the king and the queen. And he walks out and he sees Mordecai. Mordecai doesn't honor him in the way he feels like he should. And then he's just distressed about it. So much so that he calls all of his friends, and his wife is there as well. And he regales them with these tales of how amazing he is. And then he says to them, but it means nothing to me. All of this, the fact that I have all these riches and I'm respected and I have this high position and I just had this meal with just the king and queen, means nothing because Mordecai doesn't honor me. And I can't even go there. Doesn't that sound amazingly childish? But his wife says, you know what, I got an idea. Why don't you build a gallows? 50 foot high, big, tall one. And then go in and talk to the king and see about having Mordecai hanged on it. And Haman is like, that's what I'm talking about. That's the idea. So it pleased him, and he caused the gallows to be made, and that's where this chapter ends. That's the little overview. Well, you guys, do you see that there are two different women here with their husbands, and how they handled situations with their husbands and how they influenced them? Okay, Esther handled it well, and Zeresh, she was unwise. So let's begin. Right, you ready? This is where I'm gonna hit you right at the top with one that I know people are gonna say, what? But look at this. It came to pass on the third day. What did Esther do? What did Esther do? This blew my mind when I read this. She put on her royal apparel. She got dressed up, y'all. She got dressed up and went and stood to where the king could see her, right? She knew her appearance made a difference in her influence. And guess what? It was successful. It was so successful, the king held out a scepter to her. She touched it, and immediately he asked, what do you want? I will give you anything up to half the kingdom. Just immediately, that was his request. And Esther wisely did not immediately jump to, by the way, they're going to kill our whole family. No, she knows how to deal with her husband wisely. You guys, listen to me. A lot of what we're talking about here is examples of women and their husband, but I definitely think this is practical and relatable to anyone. This is about being influential. And I have to say, this is not about being influential for the sake of being influential. This is about what we're doing here in our Bible study. It's about being influential for the sake of God's kingdom. You understand? This is a bigger and broader and frankly, more important task. Not so much than Esther, because Esther was trying to save her people, trying to save their lives. And in a way, what we're doing is similar. You know, what we're doing is trying to help people know that, you know, their sin is separating them from God and they're headed to hell. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. And you might think that your appearance does not weigh in on that, but it actually does. It actually does. And it's taken me a lot of years to get to the point where I realized that that actually is important. Because I kind of grew up, I'm not the kind of person who really takes that thing seriously. You know, I am so laid back, and I cannot stand, to be honest with you, like doing my hair, doing makeup. It's actually something that I've kind of grown into over the years. And if you've watched my other videos on our family channel, then you know that. Because when I first started doing things, I made very little effort in that area. And it reflected my life. You know what I mean? But there's a reason why when you look online, there are people that are called social media influencers. And the ones that are really good at it are the ones that have everything that looks right. All of their pictures are good quality, well framed, they look nice, they have their hair done, they have their makeup done. And people look at that and they'll say, oh, that's fake, that's not real life. And I think what we have to understand as human beings is, yes, no one can look like that all the time. But what they are doing, a lot of them are building businesses or building just whatever kind of online media presence that they want that is successful. It's successful because people look at it, it's aspirational, and it's something that they really want their lives to be like, whether or not they want to actually put in the work to make it that way. And the fact of the matter is that what we have in Christ is in and of itself aspirational, but we don't always make it look aspirational. Do you know what I mean? We kind of take it for granted, what we have in the Lord, and we don't show it to other people. And it does reflect in our appearance. And I'll give you an example. My husband worked at Walmart for years. Now, you understand when most people go to Walmart, they don't necessarily get dressed up. You know what I mean? A lot of people go to Walmart in their pajamas. A lot of people go to Walmart and they don't prepare themselves mentally. You know, they just go and they're like, oh, it's Walmart, it's gonna be blah. And you're not prepared to be pleasant, to smile at everybody. You take your kids and it's like, oh, they might, you know, cry or act up or whatever, but it's Walmart, who cares? And they'll just go. But when my husband worked there, I didn't have that luxury because it was his workplace. And everyone knew who we were. And everyone also knew that he was a preacher, and that, well, first he was in Bible college and he was a preacher. And they knew that what we represented wasn't just Rick, a co-worker. It was Rick Christian, Rick Bible college student, Rick preacher. So when we walked in the building, I could not walk in looking like a mess. I could not walk in with a bad attitude, because let me tell you something, more than anyone else, they would have remembered it because they knew who I was, and it would have made an impression, but not a good one. And our kids could not be acting up either. I had to make sure they were in line. And so before we would go, like I said, I would have to make sure, I didn't have to be like dressed up fancy. This is not about being fancy. This is about this is not wearing pajamas. You know what I'm saying? Making sure I'm put together, making sure that my hair is brushed, you know, making sure that I have a smile on my face and I'm pleasant to everyone, that I'm not being rude, that I don't have it if I'm having a bad day, I'm putting that aside and focused on the task at hand, which is representing my husband well, ultimately representing the Lord well, because like I said, everybody knew that we were believers, and Rick was constantly sharing the gospel with people. And so we could not give people a reason to disregard his message, because that's what would have happened. You know, if I come in, look at a mess, bad attitude all the time, kids acting up, immediately people are like, that man doesn't even know what he's talking about. Look at his family, they're a wreck. Like it reflects, it really does. And frankly, our life as believers is going to reflect on what people think of Christ. You know, it's not, again, about being fancy. You don't have to be like dressed up as a believer, but you cannot go to people and try to tell them about the Lord and not look your best. You know, not look clean and put together, have a bad attitude. You can't, not have things in order, because it's going to make an impact. Either way, you're going to make an impact, but it's going to be a negative one. And so when it says Esther got dressed in her royal apparel, she knew that her appearance was going to make a difference. First with her husband. I mean, this is her husband. And let me tell you something, a wise woman knows if you want to get something out of your husband, the way Esther handled it, you guys, she handled it like a pro out here dressing herself up, looking all good. And he's like, girl, you can have whatever you want up to half my kingdom. It's a simple thing. It really is. It seems complicated. It seems annoying. And this is why I said I would have hated to have heard this years ago. But the truth of the matter is we represent the Lord. We represent our families. We represent ourselves. And we have got to start putting more effort into making ourselves put together, and not just like living in frump world, putting ourselves aside, not caring about ourselves. Because the truth is that the Lord gave us ourselves. This is another place where we're a steward of what God's given us, and we have to be on it if we're going to have a good influence. Esther knew it. She knew, I've got to go to this man looking good. And we've got to put that effort in too. It's effort. It takes work. Girl, do I know it takes work. But we got to put that effort in, because this is important. Esther understood this was life and death to her people. And she had to put in every effort. And I'll be honest with you, if we understood that what we're doing in terms of our influence on other people for the Lord is heaven and hell, and we understood the real danger involved in that, then we would put in every effort. And if that meant looking our best, we absolutely would put a little bit more effort into that. So then Esther says, I'm having this banquet. Why don't you and Haman come? And girl, let me just say, number 2, how else? What's the way to a man's heart, y'all? What's the way to a man's heart? His stomach. She fed him. She fed him good. And this is amazing to me, that when I say Esther was a pro, these are simple things. These are not complicated ways to have influence, particularly on your husband, but other people. Girl, she was like, baby, let me feed you some good food. Why don't you come on over? And he's like, I'm gonna give you anything you want, up to half the kingdom. He does it again. So it's like he just wants to give and give to her, because all she did was get dressed up and feed him. And look, if you want to influence your husband, let me just say, first off, look cute and feed the man, you go influence him. He's gonna do whatever, he's gonna say whatever you want, baby. That's just a fact. Who doesn't know that? And yet we don't use that in terms of reaching people for the Lord. And I'm gonna tell you how that works too, because you're not gonna necessarily feed everybody, although I tell you, probably the best way that we've been able to connect with people and share the gospel with them is just a simple act of inviting you over our house and having dinner with them. I mean, honestly, that's like the easiest way to reach people and talk to them in a way that's not confrontational, that's not aggressive, that they actually will talk and people will listen. And so many times we've been able to share the gospel with folks just by inviting them to dinner. It seems like such a simple thing, but it has a huge impact, because there's something to be said about gathering around a table with someone that brings this intimate connection. It's really important. Esther understood that. But in the broader sense, in the broad kingdom sense, it's important to know that you can reach other people by serving them. Esther, what she's doing is very intimate in a one-on-one situation, but if you're talking about in the broad perspective, you have to actually serve people. You have to find out what their needs are and meet them. And then people are willing to listen. Now, again, in the broad perspective, this might just be offering encouragement or advice, something that, if you were to put something on social media, and it's like another way you would feed someone is sharing Bible verses, sharing Bible studies, anything that would feed them, feed their soul, help them, be an encouragement to them. This is in the broad perspective. But what Esther understood, and what I think makes so much sense, is just the simple thing of being present, being your best person, putting your best foot forward, and then serving others is a way that you can have a positive influence on people, right? So here we have Esther serving, looking her best. Again, these are simple things that anybody can do, and yet we're so caught up in our own little world that a lot of times we feel like we just don't have the energy to make ourselves look our best. We just don't have the energy to serve other people. But it's not complicated. This isn't hard stuff that's impossible. It takes minimal effort to do these things, and we can reach people and have influence for Christ. You guys, I'm not kidding you. This is not something, like a lot of times I think people think serving the Lord is like going to another country and working on the mission field, and it feels like such a big thing, like it's impossible, like you'll never be able to do it. The things that Esther does are simple things that you can do right where you are and reach people for Christ in a way that makes sense. Now, mind you, this is just the beginning of her influence, because ultimately she is going to open her mouth. That's not going to come till the next chapter. But those are the things that begin the influence that gives you the opportunity to have that voice and have that conversation so that you can reach people. So let's go on to this whole situation with Mordecai, or excuse me, with Haman and Mordecai, because you see that Haman, of course, we're dealing with you see Haman and you see his behavior and you see how he's like really arrogant and he wants to share all of his riches and stuff, but don't think that he's any different than the king. This king wasn't like just some good man who was just like super sweet to Esther because he was a nice guy. That is not how this king was. If you look at the history of the king, he was a hard, wicked king, right? And yet Esther, by her graciousness and by her goodness, is able to do positive work through him, right? Well, Haman, on the other hand, is the same kind of selfish, wicked man who's really just concerned about what people are doing as a reflection of him and his glory, right? His wife handles it different. Now, I will say this. The first thing his wife does that I think actually helps her have influence is actually something that I think we can learn from. But then she does something that is unwise. So the first thing that I think that she does, and I think we can actually learn from, is she listens. So Haman is talking about all of this stuff that he's, proud of himself and all of this. And she actually sits and listens to everything he has to say. She's one of the people basking in his day and his circumstances. And I feel like a lot of times we don't make time to listen to people. Now I'll start with our spouses. This is particularly about a spouse. So Haman, as the spouse, has a lot to say when he comes home from work, and Zeresh listens. And I think that when our spouses come home from work, they probably have a lot to share, and a wise woman will listen to what they have to say, because it's really, honestly, I love when my husband comes home from work and talks to me. First of all, it makes me feel like I'm a part of his life. And second of all, I just like to hear Rick talk. And if you've ever heard my husband tell stories, he's very amusing. But everyone just likes to hear Rick talk. But the truth is that I think he likes having me as an enraptured audience. And it really helps us have a connection and have a bond. But I also know that other ladies kind of get annoyed. They're like, I'm busy, I've got stuff going on, and I get that. I mean, there are sometimes I'm gonna say, babe, I really wanna hear what you have to say, but can you give me some time to finish this, and then you will have my complete attention. And then he understands that, right? But we've got to make it a priority. I can't do that every day, because then he's gonna feel like he's not not important to me. We have to prioritize listening to other people. And I think that's totally true when it comes to reaching others for the Lord. People have different circumstances and life experiences, and if we listen, we can then, after we've listened and heard everything they had to say, help them make good decisions, help them go towards the Lord, help them, have a positive outcome no matter what it is that they're sharing with us. Because they are sharing with us in order to hear what we have to say. The idea is we already have a level of influence. If we just listen, if we make others a priority, our influence can be positive. But in Zeresh's case, no. No, because what did she say? After she hears this whole story and hears how her husband is sad, Haman had been in a banquet with the king and the queen. A wise woman, I think, would have said to her husband, baby, who cares about Mordecai? You know what I mean? Like, who is Mordecai? He's sitting there at the gate. You're in there with the king and queen. Babe, just ignore him. Like, his stuff is coming up. You do not even have to worry about it. I think a positive woman would just try to get her husband to focus on the good things and not even worry about those bad things. Because honestly, everybody in their life is going to have good and bad. And you don't have to constantly worry about all the different difficulties. You know, she could have said, listen, why don't you pray about that? If this was a godly woman, you know, you could pray about that. Maybe talk to the king and see what he has to say, like a reasonable person. If it was a reasonable request, I know that the whole situation is that he didn't feel honored. But you know what I'm saying? Like, if there was a real problem, a real situation, she could have said, listen, there's a way to solve it. It's a positive way, but you don't have to do anything that's going to be wrong, right? You would encourage him to go in a good direction. Well, Zeresh, of course, says, you should build a gallows, like 50 feet high. Like, I mean, she just goes completely out there, completely in the wrong direction. I can be honest with you, sometimes the temptation is, if my husband will come home from work and tell me a story of someone who maybe didn't treat him right, sometimes the mama bear in me, I know I'm not his mama, but it's just, you know, a mama kind of thing in your heart once you are a mama. That's just like, how dare they? You know, how dare they mistreat my man? But at the same time, I can't let that overtake me. You know, I've got to encourage him to do good and to do right. And I can't dwell on that negative stuff. So I have to encourage him to do good things, do right things in the face of all of that, right? Well, there might be a temptation to feed into it and be like, you know what you should do? You should gossip about them. Or you know what you should do? You should set them up so they get in trouble. No, 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 no. We have got to be that positivity. You know, don't feed into it. Don't push it. Don't try to make it get worse, because it's not going to be helpful to them. You know, men already have this fighting spirit within them. We got to help them bring that down. We got to help smooth those rough edges out, because, you know, they've got to realize that they're an influence too. And we have to help them, because our job is to be a helper. We have to help them to make good decisions so that they can see the Lord working in their life and they can be more of a light for him. You know, and the same, like I said, we'll start with the husband, but the same goes when we're dealing with others in the broad sense. People come to me all the time and share with me different circumstances that they're in, and they want me to encourage them or help them. They don't want me to feed into it. Not if they're wise. I mean, there's probably some people who want me to say something bad. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to. And if they don't want to hear that, if they want to be puffed up and led in a different direction, they can go talk to somebody else. But my job as someone who is going to be an influence for Christ is to encourage them to do good things. I had one friend who was having a difficult situation with her husband, and she had talked to other women, and other women were like, girl, you don't need to take that. You should just leave him. And she came and talked to me about it, and I was like, it's not even that big a deal. like that's not something, I think that would be like, you leave your husband for that. That's just something you work out. You know, it's not a big deal. Like, there's things that are a big deal. This was not a big deal. And she was like, yeah, I didn't really think so either. And that's why I was like, I need to talk to somebody else. And I was like, I don't know why the immediate response when people hear about other people struggling in their marriage is like, girl, you need to get rid of him. You don't deserve that. Well, I mean, who's gonna stay married? Everybody has problems from time to time. You guys, we give up too easy. We've got to stop in the face of difficulties just immediately wanting to go and do like the worst things or go in a bad direction. Somebody offends us. we want to immediately hurt them back worse. Or, you know, sometimes people have a difficult day or sadness and they immediately want to go off the deep end and go out drinking till they get drunk or whatever. And it's just like, no. Let's encourage each other to do good things. Good things. Because the fact is Zeresh encourages her husband to do something wicked. This thing that she encourages him to do is ultimately, and I'm not trying to be a spoiler if you don't know this story, but this is going to bring about his destruction. And we do have the influence. The power of life and the power of death is in our words and in our hands when it comes to how we encourage other people. And I feel like we don't really understand that or take that seriously. And so sometimes we're flippant about the things that we say and the things that we do and the way that we encourage people, not realizing that it's leading them in a bad direction. We have got to take the advice that we give others seriously and make sure that it's biblical, God-honoring advice, that our encouragement to other people is biblical and God-honoring. Because whether you think you have it or not, and these just little tiny pieces of being a woman of influence that I've talked about here, we all have an influence. Every single one of us has people that we influence. And if you're talking to people about the Lord, and I hope that you are, because that's the task that's been given to all believers. But if we're talking to people about the Lord, these are simple things, like I said, that anybody can do. But it's really got the power of life and death. It's really got the power of heaven or hell in your hands. You have that power in your life, believe it or not. You're going to encourage people to go toward the Lord or encourage people to go away from the Lord. And you have to decide whether or not you're going to make choices that lead them in the way to the light or lead them in the way to more darkness. And you might not think that your little choices make a difference, but they absolutely do. Absolutely do. Esther was wise and she knew it. She knew it from what she wore, to serving a meal, to even when she was being one who was listening to people, like when she was listening to the Chamberlain or listening to Mordecai, or when it comes to our words and how we influence people with what we say. So you guys, this is such an important chapter. I love this one because, like I said, it's all simple things, all things that we can do, but yet it has such a big impact. It has a big impact. So that being said, I give you a task every week, practical task to help you to be a woman of influence. You know what I'm going to say. You know what I'm going to say. I'm going to start with the easiest one, the one that you don't need to do anything for anybody else for 1 week. 1 week. That's all I'm asking. Are you ready for this? Take care of your appearance. 1 week. 1 week. Every day, look your best. Just see if that makes a difference. Just that. That's all I want you to do. I don't want you to be self-centered, and I'm not saying you gotta dress up fancy every day. I'm just saying, you know, how about I'll start with this? Shower. Sometimes that's a lot, right? Shower, brushed hair, brushed teeth, dressed in actual clothes and not throwing on, you know, yoga pants that you had on yesterday. Y'all know what I'm saying. You know what I'm getting at. Like, actually try every single day. Give some time to your appearance to make you look presentable and attractive. You can try it on your husband if you're married. See if that actually helps you. If people notice and they're like, you look good this week, you're doing something extra. Thank you. I've really been trying to, you know, take some time and work on my appearance, and it's making me feel good. One thing I do notice when I deal with my appearance is that it does make me feel better. I was talking to Tangi about this. You guys know my friend Tangi over at Freedom Homestead the other week, and I said, you know, I've really been, you know, my kids have all left the house. They're all gone. And so I do have more time to take care of my appearance. But like you guys would expect, there have been moments of struggle and sadness with that. And I've tried not to fall into too deep a depression with that whole situation. And one of the things I really was trying to do was get up every day and get myself dressed, do my hair, do my makeup and stuff, and just really try to make an effort. And I've found that just doing that makes me feel better, which I think is part of having an influence. If you feel better, you're going to have a more positive influence, right? So I really think this might sound like it's so not valuable to the kingdom of God, but I'm telling you, it is. It is, because it's what others see. You know, it's you don't just clean the outside of the cup, you do clean the inside of the cup, but you don't just clean the inside and leave the outside looking gross either. Everything has to be clean. Everything has to be good. And so this week, and this, I'm telling you, this is the simplest thing I could give you to do. And yet watch, it's going to be like the hardest to you. Because anytime you make a decision to do anything for the Lord, all of a sudden it becomes super challenging. But just, again, not fancy, just presentable, hair brushed, teeth brushed, in decent clothes every day for 1 week. See if you can do it. And then understand that's just part one. Actually try to talk to people about the Lord. See if it makes a difference. See if it makes a difference in how you're received and perceived. And I think you might find that it actually makes a little bit of a difference in others and in you. So anyway, I'm just saying, I could tell you to hold a banquet, have somebody to dinner, which I do think, if you want bonus points, invite somebody to dinner and talk to them about the Lord. There's your bonus activity. But I want to start with just some simple things. And I think the most simple thing you can do is just work on your appearance, because that doesn't require anyone else. That's just you physically doing something that can change who you are and how you perceive yourself and how others perceive you. Simple, effective. Give it a try. I don't know. We'll see how it works. Anyway, and you know I'm telling you it, so I got to do it too. So it's a challenge, I'm telling you. All right, well, that's it for this week. Next week, we are going to continue this story. There's so much to be learned from the book of Esther. I hope that you guys are enjoying it, and I hope that you're feeling that you really do have an influence for the Lord and you want to use it to glorify and honor him. So let's pray. We'll be done. Lord, thank you very much that you have allowed us the opportunity to go out there and be an influence for you to others. And I just pray that we would take the effort to do the simple things that honor and glorify you, so that other people can come to know you and we aren't standing in the way as a hindrance in any way. Lord, give us a heart to see that it's just little things that really make a difference with folks with heaven and hell. Help us to see that we in our lives that don't seem important really can get out there and make a difference. Lord, I pray that you would create an empire of women who are focused on you and serving you and reaching others for you. We love you and we thank you. Thank you for being here with us and encouraging us. In Christ's name, amen. Okay, guys, that is it for today. Hope you like that one. I'm waiting for the comments. Y'all give me a comment. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. But anyway, you all have a good day. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.